Bill Bernard. Today is the 23rd of May, 2007. This interview is taking place at the Barrier Island Center in Machipongo, Virginia. And my guest this afternoon is Norris Bowen. Can you give us your full name? And
my name is Norris Bowen.
And you were born?
I was born on Hog Island in 1939, May the 9th, 1939. And to the best of my knowledge, I was the last child born on Hog Island, which I'm very proud. I had nothing to do with it, but I'm proud of the fact that I was born on Hog Island.
And what was the year again?
1939.
1939.
In May.
Right. Hog Island. Well, it's a wonderful little piece of landscape. I've had a chance to get over there 4 or 5 times.
It is.
Fishing and getting bitten by those mosquitoes that
Those bomber
wander
mosquitoes.
around. The name Hog Island, how was that derived?
Truthfully, I really don't know because, to my knowledge, I mean, there were no exorbitant number of hogs on Hog Island. All of the game there, or all of the wildlife, and all of the domestic stock ran wild anyway. I mean, they had a free range. That was the sheep, the cattle, the pigs, the horses. They all had free range to my knowledge. Now how the name Hog Island, I have no idea.
Right. Is there somebody mentioned to me that there was a big clam, a quag?
A quahog?
Quahog?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that, somebody suggest maybe that was the origin?
That's very possible.
Yeah.
I think quahog is an Indian name, local
Quahog,
Indian name,
yeah.
and it's, yeah, one of the types of clams that we have here, yes.
Right. So you were born on the island.
Uh-huh.
Where?
Well, in the where the town was, Broadwater was the post office town name.
Right.
At that time was Broadwater, which was on the southern end of the island, and the town when I was born, of course it was very few people there because it had begun to migrate off because of the erosion as an effect of the storm in 1933. I truthfully, Dr. Bernard, I don't remember living on Hog Island. My nearest memory associated with Hog Island was really moving off. We lived there until I was like 16 or 17 months old. And I remember pulling into Willis Wharf and docking next to my grandfather's boat, Vernon Simpson's boat. And my mother handed me from, well, I was on her lap, and she handed me up to my grandfather. Of course, he was a big man, and I felt like I was being encased by a bear, you know. But that's the earliest time I remember, and that was probably in 1940, the fall of 1940.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, over the years, you've heard plenty of stories. That's one of the reasons we wanted to catch up with you today. When did the first family members, when did the Bowens get down to Hogs Island, or what took them out there?
Well, you know, I thought about that ever since I was called to do this interview. I racked my brain, and I know my parents were native Hog Islanders, my grandparents were native Hog Islanders, and my great-grandparents. Now, how far back it goes, I don't know. I do remember my father saying that my ancestors, Bowens, moved down from New Jersey probably in the 1800s, but I couldn't give you a date.
Do you have any idea why they moved to Hog Island?
No, other than maybe they were trying to run away from something. But I tend to think it was because of the seafood and the wildlife, especially the wildfowl, ducks, geese, that sort of thing. I understand the people that did move down from New Jersey were from around the Atlantic City area. which was along the coast.
Right.
And so they had the same type of topography as they had on Hog Island. Hog Island being a little bit more isolated.
Right.
Yeah.
How about the name? You mentioned the town as Broadwater. Does that describe one of the bays out there?
Well, I think possibly so. Possibly so. But there again, maybe something associated with Broad Bay or something like that.
Right.
Or the bay, Hog Island Bay itself being a broad, broad expanse of water.
Now, the town developed, I suppose, back when? During the 1800s?
During the 1800s, middle 1800s, I would surmise.
And the maximum population?
Probably at any one time, maybe maximum, at the very most, I would think maybe 250, something of that order.
Right.
Yeah.
So you left early, so you did not spend any time in the church or in the schoolhouse that was there.
No.
Do you remember anything about?
After it was moved to the mainland, yes.
Both, were they both moved, the church and the
church
school?
Went to Worcester as part of Travis Chapel in Worcester.
Oh, okay. So it still survives then?
Yes. They built onto it, and they use that now, I believe, as a common use area.
Right.
They have,
and that's a Methodist church?
Methodist church,
right.
yes. The store, one of the stores, was moved to Willis Wharf, and Randy Widgeon is living in that now. And I think, I may be mistaken, but I think the post office was in that also at one time, but I'm not really sure.
How about the school? Wasn't that moved off?
Yes, and there I think that was moved out toward old Exmoor Willis Wharf, but across the road. And I don't have any knowledge of that, because even when I started grammar school, it was gone.
Right.
I don't remember it at all.
What do you remember hearing about how these moves were made? How did they get these buildings?
Well, the buildings were moved to the creek on Hog Island on monitors and floated across. As a matter of fact, the house my mother lives in, or did live in, my sister lives in it now. It was moved, it was owned by, I believe, Arthur Marsh and his father, Ernest Marsh. And it was moved around 1926, 27, before the storm of 33, and moved what they call Little Hog Island down in Willis Wharf now. And like I said, my sister still lives in the house. But all of the houses that came across were floated on monitors. And I remember growing up, one or two of the houses, seeing them on the monitors, and moved into Willis Wharf, and then moved into place. One of them was, one I recall more vivid, was my Uncle Charles's house. That was my mother's brother. They moved up, at the time they called it Ballard Slip, where Ballard had his fish pound boats, the dock there, and they moved it up to that. And I remember they fastened lines to the house. They had wooden rollers. They had, I don't know how many men pulling on the ropes. And they had, I guess it was probably 3 or 4 young African-American boys that were handling the rollers. As the house went forward and left one roller, they would grab it, run around in front of the house and place it again, and they kept it going until they got it to where they wanted to go. And that was up just on the east side of Ballard's Hill in Willis Wharf. And I remember that just like it was yesterday. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
You've got a better memory for those way back years than I have of mine. You must be taking some special vitamins.
No, it was just such an experience for a little boy. And at the time, I think I was maybe 4, possibly 5. It was just such an exciting thing to see that house come off of that boat, and just by sheer manpower, moved into place.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned the sheep and the cattle that were on the island. Do I remember that they had that cattle roundup? Took the
Yes, they
cowboys from the shore. I think Phil Custis was one of them.
did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, my father was over there at the time.
And rounded up most
And
of the cattle.
rounded up most of the cattle. I've got a picture of him that I found. My mother just passed away recently, and we were going through some photo albums, and there's a picture of him on the horse with a cowboy hat on. Sure is.
They brought him in.
And they brought him in, yeah.
Well, now going back to your grandparents or your parents back on the island, can you bring up any stories about how life was, how the farming was, or the fishing?
Well, somewhat.
Did they bring much food in from the mainland, or did they?
Some, but mostly it was canned goods. Most of the islanders lived on what they grew and what they caught and what they shot. You know, it was very self-sufficient. As a matter of fact, I've heard my mother say, her mother, my grandmother, I never knew her. She died before I was born, but she did just about all of the sewing for all of the clothes for all of the family. And my grandfather and my grandmother had, I believe it was a total of 9 children. I think it was five girls and 4 boys. And they all did something in the house. But my mother said they would look in the catalog and say, "Mommy, I would like something like that." And my grandmother would sew it. And the boys, of course, they had homemade dungarees and that sort of thing until they got older, and then making their own money, they started buying their own. But for the most part, you know, I said one time to Laura here, Hog Islanders were very self-sufficient, very self-reliant. If they wanted a house, they didn't hire a contractor, they built it. And if they wanted a boat, they didn't go to a boat builder, they built it. And if they wanted something to eat, they either grew it, shot it. Yeah.
Did they shoot it legally?
Well, no, that's a different story. That's a different story, because I have heard some tales about the hunting and using different types of mechanical means to get the ducks or geese or whatever. Yes.
Yeah. Right. It's somewhere I've read that you had a number of hunting lodges or cottages out there.
Right.
I don't know if you remember. There was one called Farrell Cottage and another Schaefer Cottage. Does that ring a bell?
I remember hearing talk about Schaefer Cottage.
And that all these Northerners would come down to hunt and slaughter all the birds.
Oh,
and
yes.
I don't think, from my gather, that they were accepted with much cheer by the natives.
Well, not really. I mean, I don't think there was such a bad feeling, because it was money in the pockets of the natives. It helped earn the money. And not only did they do that, you know, for sport, but they also shipped a lot of wildfowl north, you know, to earn money.
And where did they ship from Hog Island? Do you remember?
Hog Island, and it went out of the on rail in Exmoor, I understand, and went north in points Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and areas such as that.
Did they have ice on the island so they could
No.
preserve them?
No.
Had to get the birds off.
Well,
in a hurry.
the hunting was during the wintertime, in the fall of the year when it was cooler. And they did have, now whether they used ice from the Exmoor ice plant or whether that was in operation or not, I don't know. But I do know they shipped some of it north. Yeah.
Going back to your mother and dad's household there, did they have electricity?
No, not on Hog Island. There was no electricity on Hog Island at all. And even after we moved to the mainland, we had no electricity. As a matter of fact, that house didn't have electrical wiring in it till I was 14 years old.
Oh,
We did our studies by oil lamp.
Mm-hmm.
Mom cooked on a wood stove. Our job, my two older brothers and I, was to go out in the woods and chop wood. We did that all summer just about, if we weren't working with my dad. And by winter, we had enough for heat and for cooking.
Right.
Yeah.
How about a telephone or telegraph?
No telephone, no. The nearest telephone, when I was growing up, the early part of my memories, especially down there, the nearest telephone was Johnson's store in Willis Wharf. Captain Will Johnson's store. Had a telephone there, had a payphone there. I remember during the war, my dad would call, and Jerry Dowdy's father, Nelson, would drive down, get my mom, and bring her so she could talk to my dad, because that was the only phone around. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, so there have been some major changes.
It sure has. Yes, it has.
Norris, what was medical care like out there? I know you had left the island, but do you remember any stories about how they handled emergencies, or whether any physicians from the shore came out to the island?
The only doctor that was specifically mentioned to me was Dr. Sturgis.
Mm-hmm. Senior, William Sturgis.
Right, William Sturgis. He used to come out and like maybe once a week. Now my grandmother, Simpson, she died because of lack of medical help. They couldn't get it soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother on the other side, Nellie Bowen, she had, I forgot what the ailment was, but a burst appendix. And they did get her to the mainland. The Coast Guard brought her to Willis Wharf.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was Dr. Sturgis, met them at the dock
Right.
and went to the hospital.
Right. The hospital opened in 1928.
Right.
He was the father of the
He sure
hospital.
was.
Yeah.
Just saw his picture. As a matter of fact, I was going through the Hall of Remembrance up there and saw his picture. Yeah. Very, very nice. But most of it was home doctoring, remedying. As a matter of fact, when I was born, I had a midwife who didn't know she was a midwife until after I was born, because my mother had planned on coming to the mainland to give birth to me, but I came too early. And my great aunt Fanny Bill attended the birth.
Right. So traditionally, they tried to get to the mainland then.
Some of them did. Some of them just stayed on the island. My older brother, Gerald, he was born on Hog Island. My mom did make it to the mainland for Roland, my middle brother, but I was just too quick. It's the only thing I ever did fast. So.
Have you been back to the island to visit, or to?
Yes. Not within the last 15 years. No, not 4. I was there 4 years ago. I'm sorry. Not on the south end. I was at the north end where the Hunt Club and the old Coast Guard station is. The last time I was at the south end where the town and everything was, it was just, not even as I remember it as a child. It was the only building standing then was a small lodge that Bill Purnell from Ocean City, Maryland built out in the sand dunes.
Right, and the cemetery's gone.
That's
I
gone,
believe,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. The foundation of the lighthouse, the newer lighthouse, that's gone. The only thing that I did manage to get back when I was building my house, I went over, my dad took me over, and I got some bricks from several of the homes' foundations that hadn't disappeared yet. And I have those on the facing of my fireplace.
Oh, wonderful.
And I have those dated, and who's like my Uncle Al or my great uncle, Al Simpson, some of his, one where my grandfather had a house, and different areas, some from the old lighthouse that had been moved from the original site of the lighthouse over to where the Coast Guard station was. As a matter of fact, that one right there. Of course, that burned. I understand that was arson. They burned that down, and I did get a couple bricks from that. So I've got remembrances of my...
well, you do. You
Yeah.
certainly have.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Coast Guard station. Now, were you stationed there?
I was stationed on the north end, not at the south end.
Okay. So, but the north end is still there.
Still there,
Right.
but it's not as a Coast Guard station.
Right. Is it owned by the Nature Conservancy?
Nature Conservancy
Yeah.
has that now as a study center, and
Right.
it's a very nice place, yes.
That's where I met the mosquitoes.
They are
Yeah.
huge. They are huge. I can remember after we moved off Hog Island, it was after World War II, my dad and my mom and us three boys and my baby sister would go back to Hog Island. We stayed on the south end. We had a little cottage on the creek, right across the creek from the Coast Guard station. And he had an old jalopy over there. And we'd ride up and down the beaches. And he used to keep 5 one-gallon jugs of water in the back of that. And my mother would pour water on the windshield. She would stand up and pour water. And the windshield wiper was one of those hand type, wasn't motorized, to keep the mosquitoes off because they were so bad they'd hit the windshield and literally coat it. But in the middle of the island, they were ferocious.
Yeah.
And I understand they still are.
Yes, they are. I traverse that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
I remember a story and I think a sketch upstairs that Jerry Dowdy made of the Union troops that came over here
I saw that, yes.
during the Civil War and were
Right. Yeah.
bedeviled by the
My
mosquitoes.
one of my major flaws was that as I was growing up, I didn't document what was going on around me. Didn't realize that this was history, that this was the end of, a town, of a way of life. The only saving grace in that was when the people moved from Hog Island to the mainland, they maintained the same lifestyle until the oysters started dying off and the clamming was waning, and the seafood industry in itself, as we knew it, was just about gone. So people went to other things. They had jobs as normal people,
Right.
as opposed to the water.
Do you remember any stories about African Americans being on the island, fishermen or Indians way back?
It's said in my family, I don't think we have any documented proof that on both sides, Simpsons and Bowens, there is local Indian blood. And in some of us, I can see it. The African American, I do remember there was one that was over there, used to stay just about all week, and he used to cut wood, make deliveries and stuff like that. I can't remember his name. I don't think I ever heard it. But there were others that came in for the day, worked, and then went back to the mainland.
Right.
There was never a large number of African Americans on the island.
Before we leave the island, the social life. What do you remember about your parents' activities there?
The biggest thing is, as soon as somebody says, what was this social life like on Hog Island? The Red Onion. That was a place that all of the Hog Islanders went. They went on Saturday, and I guess on Friday nights. And they had their dances, and they had their parties, and they had social gatherings at the Red Onion. A lot of my family were musicians on both sides. They played the banjo, the guitar, accordion, the fiddle, and they provided their own music. There was one gentleman over on Hog Island. I don't think he was really a native Hog Islander, but Sud Bill. He used to play the banjo, and I remember him after everybody moved off of the island. And I remember him for one reason. I would be over in Willis Wharf on Mr. Will Johnson's store, and all of a sudden, off in the distance, you'd hear what you thought was music, and it kept getting louder, you know. And after a while, here would come Sud walking down the road playing his banjo, and he was very good. He was good. He used to play for, I believe it was Governor Tuck, but one of the governors of Virginia. He used to fly down and pick up Sud Bill and take him back to Richmond, and he'd entertain. You know. And Sud was somewhat of a free spirit. He traveled all over. He did live on Hog Island, but I've heard he was not a native of Hog Island, and I've heard he was, but I'm not really sure. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He was a superb musician and showman. He was
sort of a
he was like a traveling troubadour.
Yeah. The first Elvis Presley.
Probably, probably yes. That's a good analogy.
How about crime? Any stories from your folks about what happened there of a disastrous or unattractive nature among the folks?
The worst I can remember, not stealing, but a fight that I remember my grandfather talking about, my grandfather Simpson, and his. I think it was his brother, but I can't remember which one, got in a fight with a member of the Bowens. And they said it was a knockdown, drag out, and one was almost killed. So it was ferocious. But that's as far as anybody stealing anything or causing a lot of problems, I never recall hearing anybody say there was crime over there. I'm sure there must have been.
So that was well before the drug scene.
Oh, definitely. The biggest thing they had over there was the liquor and wine, and I think most of it was made right there on the island. I do know on Hog Island, whether the vines are still there or not, but they had the best blackberries, even when I was a child, and those blackberries were that big around, huge and sweet. And what wasn't made into wine was made into blackberry jam, jellies, blackberry dumplings, that sort of thing. And I remember my great aunt, Hallie Smith, which was my grandfather's sister, she made dandelion wine. Never had any, but they say it was pretty potent. So that was as close to the drug scene as you would get.
Right.
Is that?
Right. Let me go back a little further. I don't want to omit the wrecks, the schooners that wrecked off the shores, the life-saving service, or the Coast Guard.
Well,
remember any stories about what happened there?
Not particularly. I do remember. There were several wrecks. I can't give you names. I know we've got some relics in here from one of them that the Coast Guard was very instrumental in saving the crew. I believe at that time it was a life-saving service, if I'm not mistaken. But to give details, names, and numbers, back several years ago, I bought a book that I thought would include some of the wrecks around Hog Island. It was called Shipwrecks of the Chesapeake and Eastern Parts of Virginia, and it never had a one.
How about during either World War I or perhaps World War II, submarine activity offshore? Or
now I do remember my great uncle Harold Riggin, who was the captain of a tug out of Norfolk. He used to travel from Norfolk, I believe, north and south. And they tell me that during World War II, he was, of course, heading whatever direction, and a German U-boat surfaced and fired off a few rounds from a machine gun, and the crew ran to the opposite side, and the sub was playing cat and mouse with them. And that went on for quite a while. And then for some unknown reason, the sub just left. I guess they just wanted to play games or get a little bit of target practice in. They said it did damage to the tug, but it didn't do enough to cause the tug to sink. They did make it to port. And but I understand several people back in at that time who were going to sea. I did see subs, but that's the only one I can say that in my mind is a true story.
Right.
It did happen. So.
There's a character that I read about, and I wonder if you can expand on this fellow named Sam Kelly, who had the store.
Oh yes, miser.
Tell us about it.
Sam Kelly, from what I was told, was an extremely tight individual, very much a miser. He was a loner. He lived by himself. He very distrustful of everybody. And the legend goes that for every penny he made, he still had, and he buried that somewhere around his house, in his house, or somewhere on Hog Island. After his death, there was I guess a mad scramble to find Sam Kelly's money. And it was rumored that several people had found it, different people had found his fortune, one of them being my Uncle Harvey. But I don't think any of those had credence. But he was definitely a unique character from what I understand. Yeah, he somehow, I can't remember now because it's been so long ago. I remember my grandfather Bowen talking about Sam Kelly, and he wouldn't let you in the store. You tell him, I want this, he'd go get it, bring it to you, and nobody entered the store. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
We don't get that kind of service today.
No, we don't. No, we don't. But it wasn't that he was trying to be a good public relations move. I think it was more that he was so paranoid. He just didn't want people to go and see what he had. You know, that's what I was led to believe anyway.
Did an airplane? Were airplanes ever landing on the island? Was there a little strip there?
Yeah, it wasn't a strip that landed on the beach. That landed on the beach at low tide on the hard sand. People were landing and taking off. As a matter of fact, when the governor's plane would come down to pick up Sudbell, it landed on the beach. And even as late as the early 50s, I remember a Coast Guard man who lived down in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, he lived in Sligo. And when he went on Liberty, he would fly his plane. And when he came back on duty, he would fly his plane. And we were over there one day during the summertime, and he flew in. But he got a little bit too high on the beach, and the plane nosed over. Didn't hurt him, but it broke the prop off, and one end of the prop. And he got out, his name was Weaver, as a matter of fact. I do remember that, Weaver. He measured from the hub out to a point just before the bad break, and he sawed it off, and he went to the other side and sawed it off, and he still flew it. Can you imagine that being allowed today?
What an engineer.
No, I saw that happen. I sure did.
Yeah. Any stories about the old lighthouses or the keepers or their families?
Well, there were keepers that were in my family, but I don't know which ones.
See, the first one was 1853. Does that sound right?
That's about right.
And then,
yes, sir.
And then 1880s or 90s, something.
Right. And now, I was up in that lighthouse, the latest one. We got word, or my dad got word, that it was going to be destroyed. So my mom and my two brothers and I went over to Hog Island. And he said, I want you boys to climb this lighthouse. So we did. We climbed to the top of it. And about a week later, it was dynamited. And I believe Bill Russell from Dynamite Bill Russell.
I
from Willis
remember
Wharf.
him. I remember him.
He's the one that blew it over, and we watched it fall. As a matter of fact, myself, my two brothers, my dad, some of my uncles, my grandfather, Bowen, were over there. Some of the Coast Guard had come out, and Captain Bill had a whole bunch of stakes. And he looked at it, and he walked out over, and ever so often he'd stop when he walked away from the lighthouse, and he'd bang a stake in the ground. And after he got through, he came back, and my grandfather, Bowen, he used to have kind of colorful language, but he asked him, he said, "Captain Bill, what are you doing?" He said, "That's where that lighthouse is going to land." And of course, in the interest of keeping this clean, I'll not tell you what my grandfather's response was. But when the dynamite was detonated, it covered every single stake that was there. A man knew he used explosives. And my father said, he said, "That's the only reason I wanted you to come up," because he'd been up it many times, all my family had, except us. And he said, I wanted everybody to know you're a Hog Island, and you went up on a Hog Island lighthouse. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
How many steps?
Oh, geez. I don't remember, but when I got to the top, as a matter of fact, he carried me about the last, I'd say 75 or 80 feet. Yeah.
Let's talk about hurricanes and bad storms. You have some memories of your family, how things were in '33 with that?
Yeah, I remember not so much my dad. For some reason, my dad didn't talk a lot about the storm. And my mother was not really vocal about it either, but my aunts and uncles and really painted a picture that was pretty grim. They said the day started off pretty nice, but then the tide started coming in. And as the tide started coming in, of course, the wind picked up. My grandfather Simpson and the boys, the 4 boys, were out working on the clam grounds. My grandmother and the girls were at home, the ones that weren't married already. I think 2 of them were married, the older 2 were married. But the tide kept coming up, and they went upstairs, and it kept coming up, and finally the wind got so fierce it washed the house completely off the foundation. So they were all set to get on a mattress and try to float to a higher place. When, I can't remember who it was in a boat, came by and picked them up, and took them to the Coast Guard station. My grandfather, not knowing that, and was separated from his sons and his daughters, thought he'd lost his whole family. And see, it was my Uncle Charles. He left the Coast Guard station and went back to where the house should have been. And he ran up with my grandfather, Poppy I call him, and he told me, he said, "Everybody's okay, they're all at the Coast Guard station, they're doing good. Everybody's okay." Well, that was a relief to him. There was another house, we always called her Aunt Mamie. I remember her being an old lady, but she was reportedly a very good carpenter and built her own house. And that was one of the few houses that survived the storm. So, but yeah, it was bad. And then Willis Wharf, I mean, the tide was, I remember seeing marks on Mr. Johnson's store of how high the tide came, and that was phenomenal. I mean, it was really bad.
Was there any loss of life in '33?
I think there was, but minimal. Not a whole lot.
Right.
I can't articulate how many or names, but I did hear there were some that lost lives. But
after that storm, did many folks leave the island then, or did they rebuild and wait until later in the decade?
During that storm, of course, the erosion had already begun back in the 20s. And from what my Uncle Harvey told me, he said, The way the island was constructed, the way it was laid out, the topography, was huge sand hills just after the surf. And then behind that was pine trees. The storm completely flattened all of those sand hills. And they were tall, 60, 70 foot high. And of course, once that happened, the tide and the erosion got worse. It washed away the trees. I remember going back there, like I said, after World War II, back in the late 40s and the real early 50s, and there were one or two trees left that were living, but most of them had fallen, and it was lapping up around the foundation of the lighthouse, which at one time was, a long way from the surf.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept going from there. And just in my lifetime, I've seen the shape and the width of that change so much. Sometimes it'll grow on the north side, sometimes on the south side, sometimes it'll shrink in the middle, or it's like a living being, which I guess it is.
And it's moving to the west.
Moving to the west.
Yeah.
I told my mom 6 or 8 months ago, I asked her, she was getting down pretty well, and I said, Mom, why don't you let me take you over to Hog Island? And she said, no, if I live long enough, Hog Island is going to be here. Meaning, it was walking, So
right.
yeah, it's moving gradually to the west.
Right. Then after 33, and they rebuilt, and most people stayed, or did they start?
Well, they started moving off before.
Yeah. Right.
And then after 33, then it began to speed up.
Right, and then 36, there was another storm, not as devastating?
Not as devastating, but there was a storm. They refer to 33. I've never heard anybody refer to 33 or 36 as a hurricane. It was an August storm.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they are very, very prolific in August all over. So it was called the August storm of 1933. Right. That's what my family always referred to it.
Now you and your parents came to the mainland in about 1940?
About 1940.
Right. Do you remember, can you tell me why they decided then to?
Because of the erosion. It was so bad. My Uncle Harvey had started a shucking house, forester shucking house, and my dad was going to work with him, which he did. He worked before he was drafted in the Navy, and then again after he was discharged after the war, he went back. And other than a few periods, that's all he ever did, was work for my Uncle Harvey until he retired, and then he bought and sold clams on his own.
Right.
But that's one of the main reasons why we moved across. And with the kids at that time, when we moved off, it was just the three of us. Shortly after we moved off, my mom had another baby, a little girl. So just with the three boys, I heard my mom say many times that had we stayed there, we probably wouldn't have been educated at all, because most of the education level there was up to the 5th grade, unless they came to the mainland.
Mm-hmm. Now, where did you go to school when you hit the mainland?
Well, I think
when you were...
Well, me?
Yeah.
When I started school, at age 6, I went to Exmoor Willis Wharf Elementary School, and stayed there until I went to the old Northampton High School, where the maintenance area is now. My first 2 years was there, and then I went to the new, what we term the new high school. It's
in Eastville. Yeah.
Right.
How about those early times in Willis Wharf? What do you remember from?
It was great. I said when I was growing up, I knew everybody in Willis Wharf. I knew the pets' names, and I knew if I needed help or needed trouble, I could just walk in the house, and nobody would say a word. And we used to spend a lot of time up at Mr. Johnson's store, his grocery store that he had for years and years and years. And I was talking with a group of people several years ago, and I said, you know, they talk about sex education in school. That's where I got my sex education was in Johnston's store, just listening to these old men talk. You know, little did I know it was mostly fantasy.
Where is that store located? Is that where the restaurant is?
Right, where the restaurant is now, Stella's.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the post office was in there. I worked for Mr. Johnson from the time I was 14 till I graduated from high school. And it was just a wonderful time. You know, people would come in and they always had running a tab, you know. They had a bill, a grub bill. All of the watermen would have a grub bill and a gas bill. And at the end of the week, they'd all come in and settle up. Or with the concurrence of Mr. Johnson, they would come in on a monthly basis and pay the bills. The post office was there, and somebody would come in and say, do I have any mail? I'd go in the post office and get the mail for them. You couldn't do that today. Yeah. Very trustful, you know, very laid back, very easy. Mr. Johnson had a delivery service. As a matter of fact, Jerry Daddy's father, Nelson, drove the truck. And many's a time when I was little, would be walking from home, and he'd be delivering groceries, and he'd pick us up, my two brothers and I, and we'd stop at a house, and we'd take the groceries in, and then we'd always stop at Ballard's grocery store on the other side of town, and he'd always buy us a fudgesicle. And that was a highlight of our week. That was really great. Yeah.
How about church? Was Epworth Church?
Epworth Church was, the minister there would come over to the mainland. At one time, I think he came over from Quimby or maybe Wachapreague, I forgot which one. But, my family attended the Methodist Church on Hog Island, and I attended Epworth after we came to the mainland. As a matter of fact, I was married there.
And what year were you married?
59.
And you married who?
I married Ruth Morrow. She was from Baltimore. Her foster parents, her adopted parents, moved down from Baltimore and bought a farm over on the seaside, and met her in school. She was 15, I was 17, and I saw her, I said, whoop, this is it.
And you've had some children?
We have one surviving child, Susan. My son, who was the oldest, lost his life a few years ago in a car crash. And he was continually looking, asking questions, reading about Hog Island. And now my daughter is that way, and every so often I'll send her some stuff, and she's a computer nut, and I think she's going to put a lot of it on CDs. And
well, we'll have to get her a copy of a CD when it's produced from this series. Where does she live?
She's in Connecticut, in New Milford, Connecticut. She's been there now about 11 years. My son, he lived here on the shore and worked for the school system. Yeah.
I'm a Connecticut Yankee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my daughter continually asked my wife and I to move in with her, she and her family. And they have enough rooms, they have a very large house. And so the last time she was home was when my mother passed away, and we were sitting at the house, and she said, Dad, I wish you would reconsider and move in with us. I said, okay, darling, I'll do it. I'll do it. When you move Connecticut south of Savannah, Georgia, I'll do it, because it's much too cold for me. Yeah. It's a beautiful place. I love it to visit, but I couldn't live there. I moved around in enough cold places when I was in the military that I don't like cold weather. Right. This is cold enough for me right here.
So you live in Willis Wharf now with your
wife? No, I live on the seaside, about halfway between Bird's Nest and Machapungo.
Okay.
I bought a piece of land and built a house back in the woods. We were talking about Sam Kelly being a miser. Well, I'm a hermit. because I enjoy the solitude back there, my wife and I, and the dog. And
what type of work are you doing now?
well, right now I'm with security at Bay Creek Resort and Golf Community. I only work 3 days a week.
There's some changes.
There is that.
The way it was.
And you know, I have mixed feelings, even though I work for Bay Creek. And it's a lovely place.
Norris, you mentioned that you went to Exmoor Willis Wharf School.
Yes.
How did you get to school? It was a good mile, was it, from where you live?
A little over a mile. Well, in the first grade, when I first started, we rode with my neighbor from our house down at Little Hog Island, what they call it, over to Johnson's store, and we got the bus from there.
Okay, so we had the bus back. This was in
That was in 45.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I started for September 45.
After the war ended.
Yes,
You know.
yes. And yeah, they had school buses then, but the road from, let's say it was from Ballard's store back to where my parents and I lived wasn't paved. It was dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And the bridge wasn't in the best of shape. It was wooden. And so they wouldn't go that far, you know. I think it was something like the third grade, maybe, middle of the third grade. They improved the bridge. So then the bus started running back there. But a lot of times when we had days like this, we'd walk. It would be so nice. We'd walk or ride our bicycles.
How about the schoolhouse, the teachers? Any particular memories of activities or?
Yeah, I remember my first grade teacher was Ruth Ames.
From Nassau.
From yes. Very sweet lady. She left years later and went to, I think, Northern Virginia somewhere, around Manassas, in that area, as a librarian. But she came back, and she was just as sweet the day she came back, 35 years later, as she was when she taught me. Several of the teachers really stick out in my mind for being so good, and a couple of them for being not so good. And
so you stayed in Exmoor Willis Wharf till
I was through the 7th grade. Well, when I started school, up until the 9th grade, I guess it was, through the 9th grade, Virginia allowed rural schools such as Northampton to graduate in 11 years. There was no kindergarten. There was no middle school. You had grades 1 through 7 was elementary, and then you started 8 through 11 was high school. Now they changed that in starting my 10th grade year. So I had to end up going 12 years as opposed to 11.
Right.
There was no graduating class of 1955.
Right, so you attended segregated schools.
Yes.
Right, I think we integrated in the early 60s. sometime.
Right. We did have 2 Hispanic, we had 1 in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
That was in my class. And we had 2 in high school. But Afro-Americans, we had none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
They went still in Machipongo to Northampton County High School.
Right.
Yeah.
In those early days back in Willis Wharf, do you remember, or your family working with African Americans? Were they on the water? Or
Oh, yes.
Working
As a
in the
matter of
shops?
fact, yes. Some of my, what turned out to be closest friends were people who worked for my dad on the boat. They were just wonderful people, hard workers. My dad thought the world of them. And people think of integration here on the shore or segregation. People that had house help that were black, they had to eat out, and that never occurred with my family. I remember many times we'd be working on the water. With my brothers and I would be with my dad, and we'd be on the boat. My dad always did the cooking. He was a superb cook. But when he cooked for all. And when we sat down at the table, the whole crew sat down. It didn't matter whether you were black, white, purple, or green. If you worked, you ate. And when you ate together. Yeah. And the same thing at the house. So sometimes we'd have to have something done around the house. And of course, if we weren't working on the water, my dad would ask a couple of the Afro-American crewmen to come down, and same way, they go in the house, we sat down at the table, Mom cooked everything, and we ate, you know. I knew there was segregation, but I really didn't realize just how much segregated people wanted to be until I got older and started going to people's houses, and it was just foreign to me at that time. So it was not a common practice, really, to treat the black workers like my dad did. And not only my dad, but it was the whole family. We'd go down to Hog Island. Now, when we went to Hog Island during the summertime, we also had crewmen, and they had a house. But the only reason they had their own house was it wasn't enough room in our place. You know, it was 3 bedrooms. And when you got 3 bedrooms and you got a mother, father, 4 children, a grandfather, and a great uncle, you know, that takes up a lot of space. So my Uncle Harvey built another house next to the cabin we stayed in. But when it came time to eat, if it was nice, we all ate outside, you know, at tables, and we'd all eat.
What a wonderful life.
It was. It was a wonderful time. I look back on that now and think, you know, with all the trials, tribulations, and drug problems, and lack of respect, and, you know, I think, how did that happen? How did that happen? When you can go back now, I'm only 68 years old, you know, and I can remember back in my childhood, there was none of that, and it was insidious, you know, it just kind of came in there. You know? And it saddens me, it really does.
Let me go back to Mr. Johnson's store.
Oh.
What intrigued you? What did he have in there that you enjoyed?
Everything. The people, Mr. Johnson himself, Kenneth, his son, Nelson, Daddy. They were like an extended family, really.
Did he have a pickle jar or pig's feet or
candy? No, they had candy. They had penny candy. They had ice cream, but they didn't have the pickle jar. But they did have, which I thought was rather unique, people would come in and buy coal oil for their lamps. And it was an old hand crank thing, you know. You put the jug there, you pump one time, that was a half gallon, you back it up and pump again.
I wonder what that cost.
Seems to me that was something like 12 cents a gallon. And it went up, it was 15 cents by the time I quit working there.
And a loaf of bread?
Loaf of bread was a quarter.
Okay.
Pack of cigarettes was a quarter, $1.85 a carton.
My Lord, now they're what, $30?
$30.
So.
A Coke was a nickel. That was a little 6-ounce bottle of Coke. I remember when it went up to 7 cents, my grandfather, Simpson, came in and he bought one, and he put a nickel up on the counter, and Nelson said, Captain Vernon, that's 2 more cents, it's 7 cents now. He said, well, I'm going to finish this one, but I'll never have another one. I'll never be back. Well, the next day he was back. It was just the thought of something going up that much.
Yeah, and a chocolate ice cream cone.
Nickel.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't sell cones. He sold the Dixie cups, the smaller ones and the larger ones. But next door, across the street at Dowdy's grocery, he did sell.
Oh, so there was competition in
There
Willis
was.
Wharf?
Actually, at one time there was 4. There was Mr. Johnson's, which really was the busiest, and then Dowdy's, Albert Dowdy's, and then Ballards, and then for a short while Jim Hamlin also had one. So there was 4 at one time going on.
Right, and I presume all the local produce and the fish came to those shops and
Well,
were sold?
most of the fish was shipped out because the local people, if they caught fish, of course, they kept what they wanted to eat, and the rest of it was sold wholesale. Not too many fish. Most of that area was strictly seafood, fish, oysters, crabs, clams, that sort of thing, and it seems to me Jim Hamlin, he had at one time a little sandwich shop, and he would sell cooked fish and crabs and that sort of thing.
Right.
But mostly what was sold in those stores was dry goods, canned goods, meats, that sort of thing. Mr. Johnson had probably the best line and the biggest clientele. He was also the paymaster for H.M. Terry. You had Nat in here. Well, he had Nat's father, of course, started the shucking house, and Mr. Johnson did the payoff for all of his workers, for his shuckers, boat crews, and that sort of thing. And that was a trip too, because they all had a running tab, and Mr. Johnson would stand in the cage, and they would bring the chits from what they were from Mr. Terry, and he would look at it, and he would get the money out, and then he'd get his big ledger, and he'd say, okay, for this week you owe $12. He'd reach over and take the $12 out and give them the rest. Yeah.
Those days are gone.
Oh, that it
Long
is.
gone.
That it is. Yes.
Well, Norris, we're getting ready here to wrap up this wonderful, informative interview, but I did want to ask you, going back to the barrier islands, your thoughts about the Nature Conservancy's involvement with this process.
Well, I have mixed feelings, really. Nature Conservancy does a lot to protect the barrier islands and other areas throughout not just the country here, but the world. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Some bad press has come out in the past, such as Nature Conservancy owns Hog Island. Well, in fact, they do own some of it, but not all of it, because there are still areas that is owned by members of my family, and as a matter of fact, I don't know exactly how much it is, but I figured out one time several years ago, on both sides, both the Bowen side and the Simpson side, with what's owned by those, if it were to be sold, it would have to be split to all the survivors now. And if it got $1 million, I might get 17 cents. I mean, we're such a big, big family. And the one good thing about that is, most of the time, Nature Conservancy doesn't allow people over unless they have permission and for a purpose. And on Hog Island, there's that little bit that we can still go over and feel like we've come home. But the work that Nature Conservancy does is good. I think it's good.
All right, well, on that note, let me thank you very much
You're
for
certainly welcome.
joining us this afternoon.
I don't feel like I've added a whole lot about Hog Island because my memories of Hog Island.
Well, you were in diapers when you left the island.
Yes,
but
I
you
was.
gave us a lot of wonderful stories and
Well,
information.
and I wish I had more. I say that's one of the things that I should have done as I was coming up, and even in my later years, as I was coming along, I should have pumped my mother and father more. Should have talked to my grandparents more. But when you're young, you don't think about things like that.
That's right. That applies to all of us.
Yes, it does.
Well, thanks very much.
Well, you're certainly welcome, Doctor, and I'm glad to see you.